The first Roman candle came sailing through my bedroom window at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night in July. I know the precise time because I was lying in bed, staring at the red digits on my alarm clock, wondering if the throbbing in my left shoulder would ever stop reminding me of last month's bomb disposal that went sideways in downtown Detroit. The explosion of color and sparks across my bedroom ceiling would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. A constellation of gold and crimson dancing across the white paint like some kind of celestial celebration. Instead, it was the opening salvo in what would become the most surreal neighborhood dispute of my 15-year career with the Detroit Police Department's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit. I rolled off the bed and hit the hardwood floor with the practiced silence of someone who'd spent years approaching suspicious packages that could turn a city block into a crater. The Roman candle fizzled out against my dresser, leaving behind the acrid smell of gunpowder and a small scorch mark on the wood that my grandmother had passed down to me. Through the broken window, I could hear the unmistakable sound of Karen, Millbrook's voice cutting through the humid summer air like a rusty blade through silk. "That's what you get for calling the city on me, you piece of garbage!" she shrieked from her backyard, which was separated from mine by a chain-link fence that had seen better decades. "You think you're so smart with your fancy job and your quiet little life? Well, let's see how you like some real excitement." I pressed my back against the wall beside the window and carefully peered through the gap in my curtains. Karen was standing in her yard wearing a faded Detroit Lions t-shirt and pajama pants covered in tiny hamburger prints, her graying hair wild and unkempt. In her right hand, she clutched what appeared to be a lighter, and at her feet sat a cardboard box that I recognized with growing alarm. It was a commercial-grade fireworks assortment, the kind that required permits and professional handling, not the sort of thing a middle-aged woman should be lighting off in a residential neighborhood at nearly midnight. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, Detective Marcus Chen, a man who'd defused everything from pipe bombs in abandoned warehouses to military-grade explosives left over from some gang war, and I was being terrorized in my own bedroom by a woman who probably couldn't program her microwave without consulting the manual 3 times. But those fireworks in her hands weren't toys, and I knew better than most what could go wrong when amateur pyrotechnics met human stupidity. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. A text message from my partner, Detective Sarah Williams. "You see the news about the warehouse fire on the east side? Arson squad thinks it might be connected to those bomb threats we've been tracking. You available tomorrow morning?" I started to type back when another projectile came whistling through my window. This time a bottle rocket that embedded itself in my bedroom wall with a sharp crack. The warhead exploded in a shower of blue and white sparks, setting a small section of my curtain smoldering. I grabbed the water glass from my nightstand and doused the fabric before it could catch fire properly. "Karen!" I called out, trying to keep my voice level and authoritative without revealing just how much I wanted to march over there and confiscate her entire arsenal. "This needs to stop right now. You're going to hurt someone or burn down half the neighborhood." Her response was another Roman candle, this one green and gold, followed by a cackle that would have made the Wicked Witch of the West proud. "Oh, now you want to talk? Where was all this neighborly concern when you called code enforcement about my fence? When you complained about my dog barking? When you made my life miserable for 2 solid years?" The fence, the dog, the complaints. It all came flooding back to me as I crouched beside my bed, brushing glass fragments off my sheets. Karen Millbrook had moved in next door about 3 years ago, shortly after her divorce from a man who'd apparently had the good sense to flee the state entirely. At first, she'd seemed harmless enough, a bit loud, a bit scattered, but nothing that couldn't be managed with the usual neighborly tolerance that kept suburban America from descending into complete chaos. But then came the fence extension. Karen had decided that the existing 4-foot chain link wasn't sufficient for her privacy needs and had proceeded to add an additional 3 feet of privacy slats without bothering to check property lines or obtain permits. The new structure extended 2 feet onto my property and blocked the morning sun from reaching the vegetable garden I'd been cultivating since my divorce 5 years earlier. When I'd politely mentioned the encroachment, she'd accused me of being a petty tyrant who couldn't stand to see a woman succeed without a man's help. The dog situation had been even worse. Karen's rescue pit bull, a sweet but massively energetic animal named Rocco, had taken to expressing his loneliness by howling operatic arias every morning at 5:30 a.m. I'd tried earplugs, white noise, machines, and even sleeping in my guest room on the opposite side of the house, but Rocco's vocal range was impressive enough to penetrate concrete. After 3 months of functioning on 4 hours of sleep per night while trying to maintain focus during bomb disposal operations, I'd made the reluctant decision to file a formal noise complaint. That's when Karen had declared war. It started small. My morning newspaper would disappear from my driveway, or I'd find my garbage cans mysteriously tipped over on collection day. Then it escalated. My car tires were slashed. My mailbox was filled with wet cement. She'd installed motion-activated floodlights aimed directly at my bedroom window, turning every night into an interrogation session. I documented everything, filed reports, tried to work through the proper channels, but Karen seemed to understand exactly how far she could push without crossing into territory that would result in serious legal consequences. Until tonight, apparently. Another firework screamed through my window, a spinner that ricocheted off my ceiling fan and crashed into my bookshelf, sending my collection of military history texts tumbling to the floor. The smell of gunpowder was getting stronger, and I could see orange light flickering against the house across the street. Karen's aim was getting wilder, and some of her projectiles were landing in the dry grass of the vacant lot behind our houses. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, knowing that by the time units arrived, Karen would probably have either burned down half the block or blown herself up trying. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional as I explained the situation, but I could hear the skepticism in her tone when I described the weapons being used. Fireworks complaints weren't exactly high priority in a city that dealt with actual gun violence on a nightly basis. Sir, can you confirm that these are actual explosive devices and not just standard fireworks? I ducked as another Roman candle sailed overhead, this one close enough that I could feel the heat as it passed. Ma'am, I'm Detective Marcus Chen with the Detroit PD, badge number 4471. I specialize in explosive ordnance disposal, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the items being fired at my house are commercial-grade fireworks that could cause serious injury or property damage. I need units here now before this escalates further. The dispatcher's tone shifted immediately. Copy that, Detective Chen. Units are en route, ETA 5 minutes. Can you maintain safe distance from the subject? Safe distance, if only it were that simple. My house was Karen's primary target, and every room on the backside of the structure was within range of her increasingly erratic bombardment. I could retreat to the basement, but that felt like surrendering my own home to a woman who'd already made my life miserable for 2 years. Besides, I had a professional responsibility here. Those weren't toys she was wielding. They were legitimate explosive devices, and if she managed to hit something flammable or structural, the entire block could be at risk. I made my way downstairs, staying low and keeping away from windows. In my kitchen, I could see the reflection of Karen's fireworks display painting my cabinets in alternating shades of red and gold. Through the back door's window, I watched her reload her launcher, a modified PVC pipe contraption that looked like something a particularly creative terrorist might cobble together in a garage. The professional part of my brain was simultaneously impressed and horrified by the ingenuity of her setup. My phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. Marcus, I just heard the dispatch call. Are you seriously under siege by fireworks right now? It's not as funny as it sounds, I said, wincing as another explosion rattled my windows. She's got commercial-grade stuff, Sarah, the kind that requires permits and professional handling. If she hits the wrong thing... I'm 5 minutes out, Sarah interrupted. Do not engage until backup arrives. That's an order. She's not going to wait for backup. She's escalating, and I can see grass fires starting in the lot behind her house. If the wind picks up... The line went dead as a massive explosion shook my entire house. Through the kitchen window, I could see a fountain of gold and silver, sparks erupting from Karen's position, but something had gone wrong. Instead of the controlled burst of a properly functioning firework, this looked like a malfunction, sparks spraying in every direction, including back toward Karen herself. I heard her scream. For all our animosity, for all the petty wars and sleeples, The paramedics were wrapping Karen's burns when Sarah pulled me aside, her expression grim in the flashing red and blue lights that had turned our quiet suburban street into a crime scene. "Marcus, we need to talk. Now." Her voice carried that particular edge that meant she'd discovered something I wasn't going to like. "Away from the circus." We walked to the end of my driveway, out of earshot from the assembled crowd of neighbors, firefighters, and patrol officers who were documenting what would probably go down in Detroit PD records as one of the more unusual domestic disputes of the year. Karen was being loaded into the ambulance, still apologizing between sobs as the EMTs checked her vitals. "What's wrong?" I asked, though part of me already suspected this wasn't going to be a simple case of neighborly conflict gone wrong. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a photograph. It was Karen's driver's license, but the name read Catherine Michelle Brennan. The address was listed as Lansing, Michigan, not Detroit. The photo was definitely Karen, but she looked different, younger, more polished, wearing what appeared to be a business suit rather than the faded t-shirts and pajama pants I'd grown accustomed to seeing. "She's not who she says she is," Sarah continued, swiping to another screen. "And Marcus, this gets worse. Catherine Brennan was a demolitions engineer for the Army Corps of Engineers until 2019, specialized in controlled explosions for construction and military applications. She didn't just randomly get hold of commercial-grade fireworks, she probably modified them herself." The words hit me like a physical blow. Catherine, had been playing dumb about explosives while living next door to a bomb disposal expert for 3 years. The woman who'd claimed she couldn't operate a programmable coffee maker had engineering degrees from Michigan Tech and enough knowledge about pyrotechnics to build her own launching systems. "There's more," Sarah said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "She was discharged from the Corps under suspicious circumstances. Something about an incident during a bridge demolition in Afghanistan. The details are classified, but there were allegations of creative interpretations of safety protocols." I watched the ambulance pull away, its sirens fading into the distance, and tried to reconcile this new information with the woman I'd just carried to safety. Why would she hide all this? Why pretend to be some divorced nobody from Detroit? That's what we need to find out. But Marcus, I don't think tonight was random neighborhood drama. I think you were specifically targeted. Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. We need to talk. See." The email was waiting when I opened my laptop, sent from an encrypted account that would probably disappear within the hour. The message was brief but chilling. "Marcus, by now your partner has told you who I really am. What she probably hasn't told you is why I'm here. The warehouse fire on the east side wasn't random arson. It was a test run. The bomb threats your unit has been investigating aren't pranks. They're reconnaissance. Someone has been studying Detroit PD's explosive response protocols, learning your patterns, your capabilities, your weaknesses. I came here to warn you, but I needed to get close enough to observe without raising suspicions. The fireworks tonight weren't an attack. They were a distraction. While half the city's emergency services were responding to our little neighborhood spat, someone else was very busy elsewhere. Check the industrial district, Building 47 on Riverside. You have maybe 2 hours before they make their real move. Trust no one in your department except Sarah. They've been watching you specifically, Marcus. You're not just any bomb disposal expert. You're the bomb disposal expert they need to eliminate before they can execute whatever they're planning. I'm sorry about your window, and your fence was 2 feet over the property line." Catherine Sarah was reading over my shoulder before I'd finished the first paragraph. "Jesus Christ, Marcus, how long has she been living next door?" 3 years, I said, my mind racing through every interaction we'd had, every petty dispute and escalated argument. "She moved in right after the Corktown incident." The Corktown incident. The case that had made my reputation and nearly ended my career simultaneously. A domestic terrorist cell had planted 17 bombs throughout Detroit's most gentrified neighborhood, timed to detonate during the annual street festival when thousands of tourists would be present. I'd managed to disarm 16 of them, but the 17th had gone off while I was still working on the timer mechanism. 3 people died, including a 6-year-old girl who'd been standing too close to the barriers. The media had called me a hero, but I'd never stopped seeing the faces of the people I couldn't save. "She's been watching me for 3 years," said, the full implications starting to sink in. Every complaint, every argument, every time I lost my temper, she was studying me, learning my responses, my breaking points, my methods. Sarah was already on her radio, calling in the address Catherine had provided. "Unit 47. We need immediate response to Building 47, Riverside Industrial District. Possible explosive device, approach with extreme caution." But I was thinking about something else. Sarah, if she's right about someone targeting me specifically, and if tonight was a distraction, what were they actually doing while we were dealing with fireworks? The answer came faster than either of us expected. Sarah's radio crackled to life with multiple urgent transmissions. "All units, we have a break-in at Detroit PD headquarters. Suspect or suspects unknown, but they accessed the evidence storage facility. Repeat, evidence storage has been compromised." My blood turned to ice. Evidence storage was where we kept samples and components from every bomb case in the city's history, including pieces from devices that had never been fully analyzed, materials that could be reverse engineered or repurposed by someone with the right knowledge. It was also where we stored the detailed reports and photographs from every explosive incident, creating a comprehensive guide to law enforcement's response methods and capabilities. They weren't trying to kill me tonight, I realized aloud. They were getting me out of the building so they could steal our entire playbook. Sarah was already running toward her car. "Come on, we need to get down there and see what's missing." But as we drove through the empty streets toward downtown Detroit, I couldn't stop thinking about Catherine's warning. Trust no one in your department except Sarah. If someone had been planning this operation for 3 years, studying my patterns and methods, they would have needed inside information about police procedures, shift schedules, security protocols. This wasn't just about stealing evidence. This was about someone within our own department helping to orchestrate an attack on the city. Detroit PD headquarters was chaos when we arrived. Officers were swarming through the building, checking every room and corridor for signs of intrusion, while forensics teams dusted for prints and collected evidence from the storage facility. Captain Rodriguez met us at the elevator, his face grim. "Chen, Williams, thank God you're here. We need you to assess what's missing from your cases specifically." The evidence storage facility looked like it had been hit by a tornado, but this wasn't random destruction. Whoever had broken in knew exactly what they were looking for. The filing cabinets containing routine drug seizures and theft evidence were untouched, but the sections dealing with explosives and terrorism cases had been systematically ransacked. "They took everything from the Corktown bombing," I reported, after 20 minutes of inventory. All the device components, the timer mechanisms, the chemical analysis reports, plus files from at least 6 other major cases going back 5 years. "But they left the most dangerous stuff," Sarah added, pointing to a secured cabinet that remained locked. "The live explosives we keep for training purposes are all still here. They didn't want weapons, they wanted information." Captain Rodriguez was writing notes on a pad, but something about his demeanor was bothering me. He seemed less shocked by the break-in than I would have expected, and he kept asking specific questions about which files had been taken rather than focusing on how the security had been breached. "Captain," I said carefully, "how did they get past the biometric scanners? Those systems require clearance levels that only a handful of people in the department possess." "We're still investigating that," he replied without meeting my eyes. "Could have been a malfunction, or maybe they found a way to bypass the system." But Sarah and I both knew that wasn't possible. The biometric scanners had been installed after 9/11 and upgraded twice since then. They required both fingerprint and retinal scans from authorized personnel, and the system kept detailed logs of every access attempt. If someone had gotten into evidence storage, they'd either used legitimate credentials or had help from someone who did. My phone buzzed. Another message from Catherine. "Don't trust Rodriguez. Check his financial records from the past 6 months. Large deposits from offshore accounts. Get out of there now." I showed the message to Sarah, who went pale as she read it. Captain Rodriguez was our direct supervisor, the man who assigned our cases and had access to all our operational details. If he was compromised, then every bomb disposal operation we'd conducted in the past year could have been part of some larger plan. Marcus, Sarah, R.